Chairman of the County Council, Chairman of the Midland Regional Authority, public representatives, ladies and gentlemen, can I first of all join with the Cathaoirleach in welcoming everybody here to Tullamore for this very important and welcome event today. We're delighted to have been invited to be part of it, and we're delighted to have the opportunity to convey to you, I suppose, what we have to offer in the national interest in bringing forward the next generation of power generation. And I'll focus on a couple of key issues in the time available to me. I'd like to outline briefly the planning and development policies here in Offaly, which seek to build on our tradition of power generation and the legacy infrastructure of that period to promote new forms of energy production, including alternative and renewable energy, as well as the potential associated enterprise and employment spin-offs. And one of the key messages I'd like to convey to you today is that there is an appreciation and understanding of power generation in this county that, in my experience, if not unique, is certainly unusual. And I think that's a key asset in the development of the county and in the development of the energy industry in the future. I'd like to acknowledge the assistance of our Senior Planner in Offaly County Council, Andrew Murray, in preparing the presentation. It's hard to talk about the future of power generation in Offaly without talking about the past. And on the screen there, the picture in the centre is that of the Bog Rosemary, which holds pride of place in our county crest here in Offaly. So it's no surprise that the relationship between the people of the county and the county's peatlands has been a positive one down through the ages. I'd like to outline to you today how this relationship has evolved into a positive and productive culture of energy and power production, not only in recent generations, but now and onwards into the future. The industrialisation of our peatlands here in the county, and indeed in the Midlands, from the mid-20th century, led to the first opportunities for large-scale power generation in the county. And there are iconic images. Anybody who is familiar with the county at all will recognise some iconic images there, now memories in fact, from the former power plants which operated here in the county. Peat-based power stations at Forban, Shannonbridge and Road, and on the Laois-Offaly border then in Portarlington. And at the peak of their operation, these four stations combined to generate a total of 348 megawatts of electrical power for Ireland, and this contributed a significant share of the total generation capacity of the country at the time. I think it's fair to say that, notwithstanding the fairly rudimentary technology of the time compared to today's technology, there remains a certain fondness in the Offaly psyche for those locations, and indeed they have inspired more contemporary representations through, for example, some of the sculptures in the Sculpture Park in Lochborough Parklands, which I hope some of you have visited in the past, and I would certainly encourage you to visit now if you have the time, or if not, come back to us to have a look at it. So the past feeds forward into the future. The requirement for additional electricity, the requirements of modernisation and the requirements of more efficient and cleaner generating stations led to the development of the new peat-fired station near Eden Derry in 2000 and the replacement of the Shannonbridge station in 2004. The County Council's development plan of 1996 had set an objective to have a new peat-burning power station located in North Offaly. Additionally, a 116 megawatt standalone peaking plant, Cushaling Power, was built on the Eden Derry site and entered service in 2010, and this maximised the use of the existing infrastructure on the site. The subsequent county development plan, adopted in 2003, continued the positive policy disposition in relation to former energy generation sites in seeking to secure the redevelopment of the power station sites at Road and Forban. And within the lifetime of that plan, peaking power plants of approximately 110 megawatts were applied for by the ESB and permitted by the council on both sites, and one of these has been built at Road. Our current county development plan, adopted in 2009, takes this positive policy position even further, including a specific chapter dealing with energy, covering renewable and non-renewable energy development and related matters. It includes a policy to actively encourage the redevelopment of brownfield sites, in particular former ESB and Bordnamona sites. And in March and April 2010, An Bord Pleanála granted permission under the Strategic Infrastructure Act for 2 gas-fired power stations, one at the former ESB power station site at Lumclune, or Ferban, as we'd know it, and in West Offaly, and the other adjacent to the Bordnamona work site at Derrygreena in North Offaly. These were unrelated applications which, by coincidence, ran almost concurrently, and they were the first applications considered in the county under the strategic infrastructure legislation. And we learned a number of lessons from that. I suppose the importance of the pre-planning discussion with the planning authority before it goes to An Bord Pleanála, the importance of the local development plan and the views of the local planning authority for Bord Pleanála in helping them come to their decision, and also the significant level of input required from the local authority, in particular our planning and engineering staff, right through the process, including the oral hearings. Most likely due to their location, the history and experience of industrial development and power generation on the sites, and a familiarity with such developments over time in Offaly, only one local objection was received to the 2 in the course of the 2 applications. And while the locations could be considered as conventional power generation, their design specifically aims to facilitate large amounts of wind energy development planned for Ireland's electricity needs by being able to supplement energy demand at very short notice. They could therefore be described as part of an evolving, modern and more efficient power generation system to serve the entire country. Moving into the area of renewable energy, which, as I said, is positively addressed as part of the energy chapter of our current county development plan, permission was granted by the council in July of 2010 to Biotricity for a biomass combined heat and power plant directly adjacent to the former power site at Road, again a site identified for such development in the county development plan. More recently, and continuing this trend of new energy developments locating on or adjacent to large sites with antecedent uses, permission was granted by the council and confirmed on appeal by An Bord Pleanála for an advanced heat recovery and pyrolysis unit at Derryclure outside Tullamore, to be developed by Glenpower. Moving into the area of wind energy, I suppose our first, we dipped our toe in the water in this first in relation to development in the west of the county. And as Andy has said earlier, while this part of the country doesn't have the wind speeds of the west of Ireland, it does have greater wind speed than continental Europe. And the advances in technology and design have meant that places like Offaly are well placed to contribute to the development of the industry, most especially within our large area of cutaway peatlands. The Rin development is a small one, but I think it again, we learn lessons from all of these. It showed it is located, I suppose, in a sensitive enough area in that it's adjacent to the Lochbora parklands, but it showed that you can combine considerations of scale, location, antecedent use, as well as heritage, amenity and tourism considerations. You can combine them into a desirable outcome depending on the scale of the development. And I suppose moving on from that then, construction, and John is here and I'm sure he'll deal with it in greater detail. Construction is currently underway on Bordnamona's 80 megawatt Mount Lucas wind farm. The 30 turbines up to 156 metres in height to the tip will be situated on approximately 1,000 hectares of cutaway bog in the east of the county, generally between Dangan and Edenderry. And this site is located within one of the 2 wind development areas identified in the county development plan. The council granted permission for the 32 turbines sought, of which 2 were admitted by An Bord Pleanála on appeal due to their orientation and proximity to dwellings. This welcome development is of significant scale and well illustrates the potential for further wind energy development that exists in Offaly. In addition to a well-distributed array of rural sites with a history of power generation or related uses, Offaly is extremely well served by electricity grid infrastructure. In relation to the Midlands, EirGrid's Grid 25 strategy provides for increased transmission capacity, which will allow for a growth of renewable generation connections and a network capacity, and to allow for small-scale thermal generation in the region. As part of the further development of the county, we envisage making greater use of the 200 kV lines and substations for industry and employment, and perhaps even the 400 kV line, which passes currently uninterrupted through the full width of the county. It's clear from, I suppose, the previous points I've made that there is a long tradition of and public support for energy generation and power development in County Offaly. Why is that? Well, since the 40s and 50s, power generation in the county has meant employment, it has meant the development of enterprise and technology, and it has meant the development of education and training provision, as well as local and community development in communities right throughout the county. It is also clear, I hope, from my preceding remarks, that there has been a positive planning policy background over the years, which is moving to keep pace and facilitate new forms of power generation. As you've seen, the policy in the current plan, which is the plan from 2009 to 2015, has positively facilitated the granting of planning permission for 6 significant facilities, from conventional gas-fired stations to peaking plants to biomass CHP to pyrolysis heat recovery and wind power. And there's a selection of the relevant policies from the development plan illustrated there and in your pack. The development plan also supports the continuance of the 2 peak generation stations at Edenderry and Shannon Bridge, and in particular the move towards co-firing as per the National Climate Change Strategy. Extensive trials have been carried out with various types of biomass at the 2 stations, and planning permission was granted by the Council for amendments to the Edenderry power plant to facilitate a shift towards 30% biomass co-firing. The current county development plan continues and further strengthens the policy to actively encourage the redevelopment of brownfield sites, in particular those that might have been used in the past by companies like the ESB or Bord na Móna. We consider that as a council we have delivered well on the policy, and we are determined to continue to do so in the future. It is important to acknowledge the fact that the County Development Plan, if you like, is our local planning policy, but we are also informed and bound by the provisions of regional and national policy. And we welcome the fact that the National Spatial Strategy, to be reviewed in this year, which was published in 2002, recognises the potential of the Midlands, in particular the worked out bogs, for wind energy development at a significant enough scale to support ancillary manufacturing, servicing and development activities, thus helping to position Ireland as an innovator in wind farm technology. The regional planning guidelines adopted by the Regional Authority in 2010 positively deal with energy and the future use of peatlands through a strategic goal, through listed strengths, through a number of policies and a number of objectives, as illustrated on the slide. Moving on to, I suppose, the wind energy component of our county development plan. We prepared a wind strategy during the review of the county development plan in 2008, and a sieve mapping process was used. I know the illustration there is too small to see it in detail, but just to say, a number of filters were applied, including ecological and landscape designations, land cover mapping, particularly the extent of cutaway bogs, proximity to the grid, density of residential developments. Considerations like that were layered together to help us identify wind energy development areas. The output was a sizable area designated as open for consideration for wind energy development in both East and West Offaly. In the remainder of the county, larger scale wind energy developments are not normally permitted, and the rationale is to manage the impacts of large scale developments on the environment of Offaly as a whole, while maximising the potential for optimal development location as well as grid connection. The wind energy strategy contains a policy to review these areas once substantial wind energy development has occurred within them, taking into account considerations such as landscape, established wind farm projects, requirements for alternative energy, the availability of grid connections, and environmental constraints. And as the Cathaoirleach has alluded to in his earlier remarks, we're currently taking stock of our experience to date while we move forward to prepare the next county development plan. The future potential of energy from Offaly could be summarised as continuing to build on the long-established tradition, policy experience and public understanding of energy developments within the county, looking to the future to facilitate new forms of energy production. And some of the advantages we have to offer include extensive cutaway peatlands, an array of sites, which I'll mention in a moment, with related antecedent and newly permitted uses, which have potential for generation, manufacturing or assembly, maintenance, research and development, or administration and office support. We have grid availability, so there's capacity for energy development and associated industry. And we have a tremendous opportunity to assist Ireland in its pre- and post-2020 renewable energy requirements, as well as to export. And I think the reference that Andy made earlier to an analogy with food production and farming is very relevant in this context. We don't sit here as an island and say we're only going to produce food to feed ourselves. We see our proximity to larger adjacent markets as an advantage in terms of development of enterprise and employment in the country, and I think we really should see energy in a similar way. There are a number of sites in Offaly related to previous energy usages which are well placed to support future energy-related development, including the type of upstream and downstream opportunities being considered here today. For example, in Road, near the former ESB power station, a business park has been developed as a partnership between the council, the ESB and the local community. There's an already permitted biomass CHP plant there, and there's lots of space there adjacent to the M6 Dublin-Galway motorway. Lumcloon, at the site of the former Forban power station, there's a permitted gas-fired station consented to under the planning process. There's a possibility for a downstream partner, maybe in heat use, and there is an industrial park layout also permitted as part of the planning permission. In Derrygreena, again adjacent to the M6, there's a permitted gas-fired station, possibility there for a downstream partner, space available, and there's a recycling use also permitted nearby. And at the site of the former briquette factory in Mount Lucas, there is space available very near the Bordnamona wind farm development currently under construction, and the broader wind development area identified in the development plan. And there are recent antecedent industrial uses on the site. Then in support of that and looking more widely throughout the county, I'd like to point to the significant potential of the towns in the county to contribute to the future development of the energy industry for the Midlands and indeed for the country. For example, appropriately zoned and located lands in towns such as Tullamore, Birr, Edenderry and Forban. All have land zoned and of a high profile to accommodate the expansion needs of industry and the development of new enterprise and employment projects, including manufacturing, assembly, research and development, administrative support, and the development of power generation from facilities which are suitable for location adjacent to existing populations. So, Chairman, moving towards a conclusion, we would like to see Offaly being recognised in the future as the energy county. If all the developments existing and permitted were in operation together, within the county, there would be a capacity of 1,400 megawatts. The peak electricity demand to date in Ireland is 5,000 megawatts. Now, I accept that not all developments are all going to proceed and be in operation at the same time. However, it doesn't take into account ideas which you may have and which may present themselves for future development across the energy spectrum. Offaly is poised and ready to take advantage of these, subject to planning environmental consents required by law. And I suppose some of the key advantages we have to offer is good location relative to the Greater Dublin area. We're in what you might call an infrastructure support zone adjacent to the Greater Dublin area. We have wind development potential. We have great potential for synergy between wind energy and green infrastructure, and we are contemplating the development of an energy park to try and crystallise that into a particular location. And we have supportive policies and a supportive public. So I'd like to conclude by just restating the fact that there is a tradition and heritage of energy generation, including public understanding. There's positive planning policies. There are suitable land uses and population densities within the county to facilitate the development of renewable energy in the future. And all I'd say is watch this space. We're anxious to fill it further. And my colleagues, David Minton, Economic Development, Andrew Murray, Planning, and Declan Curran, Director of Services, who will be on the panel later on, are available to assist you with any inquiries you might have. Thank you very much.